The Echo of Light in the Shadows of Divided Realms. Prologue. The Echo of Shattered Silence. Under a silence nearly suffocated beneath the thick dome of night, Kaelan stood on the edge of the wooden platform suspended above the Graveyard District, that boundary between the peaks of earthen towers and the fading moonlit sky. Moments ago, his breath had danced in rhythm with the city's royal broadcast, a sharp siren awakening the workers and announcing a new council decree, a ban on any evening gathering without a permit. The scent of burning wood wafted from the nearby forges, striking his breath with a wave of heaviness and sorrow, as if fate itself reminded him of a battle waged deep within his heart, a battle of fear and regret he dreaded even in silence. From beneath his tattered oilskin coat, he glimpsed the glow of the upper camp, where nobles' golden belts gleamed over armors and around bellies that feasted more than any festival could honor. On the other side was the People of the Shadows, that hidden world cloaked in factory smoke, where the roar of heavy machines twisted in endless groans, reminding Kaelan of a return where his teeth were broken under the weight of poverty's labor. He listened, truly listened to the silent stream of unseen tears that poured onto his heart as he recalled the faces of his friends, those who had seen in his eyes the glimmer of a coming revolution after years of stillness. A black question echoed in his mind, born from the rebel of Cain. How can a single cry shake this world and reorder its layers completely? He did not yet know the answer, but he saw clearly that the cry would become something far stronger than the echo of boots on gravel. In that very moment, a door of fear opened inside him. He feared that the cry might be the start of something even more destructive. He had seen the tears of his sister Nira as she collapsed in his arms, helpless, when flames consumed the wooden shacks and the scent of her burned skin would never leave him. Suddenly, the wings of regulated magic unfurled within the upper palace corridors. Massive blue lamps lit the exquisite crystal tubes that carried enchanted rays to the princess's gardens. Deep in his chest, Lord Nithor Sangwara felt a subtle tightening, like one who senses smoke creeping along the borders of his white palace. He stood inside his ornate office, studying the reports that labeled Kaelan as the silent threat rising from the fourth tier. He gave a bitter smile, as though counting the moves of a most dangerous psychological game he would play to tame this young man who had refused to surrender his fate's last bite. Amidst this tension was Lana Roseville, cloaked in gray, walking quietly behind the distant city walls, well beyond the ears of the upper class. Her heart pulsed with faith that unless the chains were hanged by their roots, the darkness would continue to seep through the social layers, carrying with it endless misery. She remembered a distant voice, a cry not yet born, but she heard its call deep within herself, and she mingled the dust of her palms with the fragile threads of hope. Evening deepened, and the flags of Olin Palace ignited atop its towers, while the workers' quarters glowed with pale oil lamps, hiding behind faded murals on the walls. Guards' eyes flickered in palace corridors with lantern light, but none felt what Kaelan did. The sleeping rebel within him was waking little by little, stirred by a growing desolation with each passing day. He closed his eyes for a moment and imagined the instant he would unleash his cry and shatter the suffocating silence. And so the silent questions begin to be recited. Can Kaelan break through the wall of fear built deep within his soul, sharing his pain with his comrades to offer them hope? Or will his dark convictions find their way into his heart and erase even the last remnants of his humanity? Does Nithor Sangwara truly believe that magic is the sole right of the upper class? Or will his choices lead him to a discovery that shatters all his worn-out beliefs? And what role will Lana Roseville play in this psychological equation? Will she surrender to the shadows trying to pierce her heart, or will she remain the faint flame that dispels the clamor of darkness? Here, in the realms of the kingdom of light and shadow, all await the moment when the leaves of fate will unfold. The curtains fall before the scenes to come, but the door remains open, and the voice of silence waits to be broken, to begin the true echo of the journey, for heroes and enemies alike. Chapter 1. Vanishing into the Shadows. In the pale dawn, tongues of smoke trembled above the roof of a remote shack in the graveyard district, and the sound of trickling water, mingled with cries and tears, erupted through the air. In that moment, Kaelan Arkwright's heart pounded with exceptional intensity as a deep loneliness crept into his soul like the shadows of an endless night. It wasn't the smoke alone that stirred unease among the living. His younger sister, Naira, had vanished without a trace. After the night patrol ended, Kaelan began searching for her through the narrow alleys veiled in a thin layer of dew. The scent of his sweat mixed with the scorched earth's odor, reminding him of the guilt that haunted him ever since his failed rescue attempt when she was a child, trapped in an earlier fire. In those dark hours, a stunned thought echoed within him. How could Naira disappear without a sound or sign? Inside him stirred a blend of terror and hope, groaning beneath the weight of memory. He remembered the last time he saw her calm smile before the guard's shouts drowned her voice into silence. Fear sat on his chest like a heavy block, squeezing his breath as his lungs constricted around a question. Have the new decrees turned them into monsters, ones who show no mercy, not even to children? Suddenly, a cold hand touched his shoulder from behind. He turned slowly, cautiously, to see the remnants of moonlight filtering through rising smoke, behind which lurked the silhouette of a figure he didn't recognize. Tension surged in his chest like a compass needle spinning wildly between the urge to flee and the will to stand his ground before the unknown. Then the sound and vision both faded, leaving behind only a distant whisper, "Kaelan." His breath halted. A question now hung in the morning air. Who was that voice, and would the next act bring a message of life or a warning of death? Kaelan swallowed the heavy air like a man standing at the edge of a bottomless abyss. The voice that whispered his name echoed again, but closer this time. He inhaled the dense blend of tar and smoke, feeling fear surge inside him like a wild beast breaking free from its cage. There was no time for hesitation now. He moved toward the direction from which the voice had come. He found a narrow alley stretching south, its edges nearly embracing one another. Kaelan ventured into it blindly, driven by a cocktail of awe, anxiety, and the gnawing question, could his sister be in greater danger than he ever imagined? With each step, the surrounding lights dimmed further. Closed wooden doors emerged, the last tongues of light fading behind shattered windows. As he ran a hand along the cold wall, a delicate hand touched his from behind a crumbling wall. His legs trembled for a second, and he heard his heartbeat laughing in his head. Is it Naira, or someone lying in wait? He was gripped by fear, but summoned his courage and slowly lifted the edge of a wooden panel, only to find a scrap of fine silk fabric, the kind worn by nobles, something completely out of place in the lower districts. The fabric was adorned with silver royal embroidery, stained with faint red drops that looked like dried tears upon its edge. A cry rang in his mind. How did a noble's garment end up here? And what does this blood have to do with Naira's disappearance? Suddenly, a large man emerged from the shadows, cloaked in darkness, his features obscured. A harsh, rasping voice broke from him like a hammer strike. "Drop your weapon, or else." The cramped room barely fit two people, but the danger didn't lie in the man alone. It came from the hidden presence shifting behind him. A shadow crept like a living thing across an old metallic wall. Kaelan's limbs stiffened. The presence didn't walk. It contracted and expanded like a primal force desperate to swallow him, rage, and buried regret. Kaelan took a step back, eyes fixed on the man before him, his expression a mixture of shock and desperation. "What do you want? Where is my sister?" The man replied, his voice drifting like mist from a dark cellar. "Nira is not here, but you'll be the first to uncover the whole truth, even if it costs you your shadow." At that moment, a warped image flickered over the cloaked man's body. He appeared as an ancient knight, holding a sword etched with glowing violet lines. The moment held its breath as the blade flashed toward Kaelan's chest. But just as it neared, it shattered, as if an invisible hand had hovered over the steel with a nightmarish smile. A faint blue light reflected on the alley wall, revealing a swirl of magic flowing from the stranger's palm. As it unfurled, vision solidified before Kaelan's eyes. An image of his old friend from the shadow class, Felix Vaughness, being abducted, his scream tearing through the depths of Kaelan's soul. "Kaelan, watch out! They took me because of something bigger than you think." With that final cry, the blue light vanished. Kaelan remained in the darkness, clutching the noble silk fabric, a storm of thoughts crashing in his mind. What secret made Felix a target of this conspiracy? And how can I protect Nira if they possess magic powerful enough to rival the nobles themselves? His heartbeat thudded in his ears as his eyes clung to the last glimpse of his childhood friend disappearing into a darkness that made even shadows feel heavier. A final question hovered in his mind, one he couldn't answer aloud. Can he truly distinguish between the ally, Lana Roseville, who has always stood by him, and the enemy who breathes just behind him before that doubt drags him into a pit with no escape? Chapter 2: Threads of Unspoken Betrayal. The morning light intensified, sculpting its form across the worn-out walls of the graveyard quarter, carrying with it the scent of soil and the cold smoke rising from the stoves of the poor. Kaelan Arkwright breathed slowly as he climbed a small hill behind his shack, trying to sharpen his senses for any sound or movement that might lead him to a trace of his sister, Nira. A quiet fear and a painful question echoed inside him. Why had there been no sign of her since yesterday? He no longer felt safe, not after the terror he had experienced the previous night and the growing worry for his friend Felix Vanes. He thought of Lana Roseville, who had not yet appeared. She usually came before dawn to bring news from the third tier. He recalled how her eyes often darted toward the closed doors and how her whispers suddenly vanished when Felix had spoken his name. It had seemed suspicious at the time, yet his heart still beat with hope for the meeting. An hour passed like an eternity compressed into a single breath. Kaelan could no longer bear the silence of the void. No electricity, no signs to live by. He hesitated, then made his way toward the Ascension Market, a wide trench that separated the workers' quarter from the remnants of the third tier's marketplace in the eastern corner. There, among the aisles of abandoned stalls, he caught the hand of Vera, a modest silk cloth vendor, and asked her urgently about Lana. She nodded cautiously. "She left me early this morning, Kaelan, with a note saying she'd meet you somewhere else today." But the break in her voice gave Kaelan no clear answer, only cast him into a new maze of tension. Kaelan stepped into an abandoned stone courtyard, roofed with climbing plants clinging to cracked stone beams. There he found Lana, standing before a stone pillar etched with a small symbol of forbidden magic, holding a blotched note written with a weak feather. Her face bore signs of unease and hesitation, but she knew she had to share some painful truths. Lana took a deep breath before speaking. "Kaelan, I visited Felix last night. He was in an abandoned house beneath the old watchtower." His heart stopped for a moment, and he remembered his friend's face, strangled by a blue scream he'd glimpsed by chance, then gone. He let out a choking sigh. "Why didn't you tell me that?" Lana gave a bitter smile, her eyes marked with shock. "Because he said he didn't want you risking yourself to reach him. He said he found what he was looking for among the lords, and that he had to work with them to free his family from captivity in the Shadow Zone. I didn't want to rip the hope from you, only for you to hear failure from my lips." That was the moderate shock that shattered Kaelan's trust in her. A strange doubt loomed in his chest. How could a friend with whom he had shared the alleys of deprivation sell out so easily? He wondered, was Felix told a secret or offered a deal at too high a price? Before he could respond, the sound of hurried footsteps approached them from the south. They turned together and saw someone walking quickly. The face was hidden beneath a gray scarf, but the figure was slender and bruised. As the person stopped before them, they slowly lifted the scarf to reveal a face. A blonde girl, her wide eyes filled with both terror and shock. Her voice faltered before she spoke. "Kaelan, I saw him. Felix was here just moments ago, carrying a small bundle and 20 pieces of pure silver. Men in black cloaks caught him, and then the sound vanished." Kaelan was struck by the weight of betrayal and illusion among his friends. He turned to Lana, barely containing his anger. "So he did sell himself to Lord Nether Sanguara?" Lana shook her head slowly, sorrow twisting her features. "It's not like that. They didn't give him a choice. Felix was fined a massive amount because they caught him helping slaves in the excavation pits. When he refused to work magic to pay it off, they arrested him. They told him they'd kill his mother if he didn't cooperate. So he agreed to surrender his freedom. Temporarily." Kaelan trembled at the weight of what he'd heard. The question burned in his mind. Can friendship demand such a price? He remembered Felix's dry smile in the excavation vaults just days ago when he had vowed to protect his family. Now Kaelan no longer knew how to read the threads of trust and betrayal in this world. Everything seemed tangled in deeper malice. Lana noticed the tension harden Kaelan's features, so she added in a soft voice, "There's another thread. While passing near the eastern threshold of the palace, I saw markings glowing faintly on a stone wall, a phrase written in blood. The curse begins when noble blood is enslaved. And beneath it, a twisted circle bore the symbol of forbidden magic, and the name Night of Light." Kaelan flinched when he heard Night of Light. A memory surged, an old mural in an abandoned temple, depicting a knight wielding a curved sword, surrounded by violet enchantments. But how could that name appear etched on a palace wall? And what was its connection to the conspiracy the lords were orchestrating? The tension in the air briefly faded, only to morph suddenly into a looming danger. A metallic gleam flashed behind Lana. A short sword scattered blue ice before vanishing. Lana raised her hand in defense, but the message was clear. It was a warning from someone who saw friendship as nothing but a weakness to be crushed. Darkness clouded Kaelan's vision as he remembered Felix shouting his name in that final moment. They were conspiring to bring him down. A tight dread gripped his heart. He had to decide, quickly. Should he chase after the mistakes of his friends, or weave himself into the threads of a greater conspiracy and open the gate to truth? Silence hung for a few seconds. Then Kaelan spoke, gripping Lana's shoulder with a gaze of dual colors. "Whatever happens, I won't back down. I'll find out who's behind this Night of Light and how they're grasping at the fringes of forbidden magic. If Felix is a victim, then I'll be the shield that protects his family." At that moment, Lana's eyes glowed with a pale hue tinged with dread, and she whispered with helpless fear, Kaelan, they know everything about us. They pierced our hearts before our feet even reached their gates. Kaelan let the silence linger for a moment, followed by a question that would not fade. Who are these people pulling the strings of fate, and how can this magic loathe us before we even understand it? Chapter 3. The Depth of Loss and the Echo of Familiarity. The sun cast its first rays across the fractured horizon, striking the walls of the graveyard district with hues caught between twilight and daybreak. Kaelan Arkwright stood atop a small hill overlooking the clustered shacks beneath the steel wall of the Upper Kingdom. The air was thick with the scent of wet earth, tainted by the blood of the previous night, mingled with the fading whispers of smoke. His heart spoke a single thought. Lana, can we truly trust her? Lana Rosevale approached with silent steps. Her eyes studied the creases of his face, stealing glances filled with questions and worry. A heavy silence passed before she finally spoke, her voice calm but laced with a blend of grace and gentleness. Kaelan, I've found Felix's location. He's in one of the abandoned valleys east of the third-tier wall. And there's a symbol, just like the one carved into the palace wall, but clearer. A winged horse cloaked in blue and a glowing blade beneath it. A tight knot formed in Kaelan's chest as the image of the kidnapped Felix resurfaced, his eyes wide with terror and hope. But Kaelan buried it under his fresh layer of caution. Do you think they moved him there on purpose? Lana gave a strained smile, speaking with careful conviction. It's not necessarily a bad sign, but it's part of a plan. I saw magical threads wrapping the place, and a powerful guardian stands between us and him. Fear murmured in Kaelan's core as he measured his trust in her. I'll go alone. Lana raised a brow, her voice calm but edged with quiet reproach. Kaelan, I won't let you face this alone. I've shared your terror from the beginning, and I'll share your hope to the very end. He took a deep breath, uncertainty etched in his features, then reached for her hand. The warmth of her palms against his skin reminded him of the depth of his fear and the safety her presence brought. A soft smile crept to his lips, caught between pain and longing, and he replied, I won't do it without you. For a fleeting moment, tension dissolved. A faint memory surfaced of two children secretly watching their mother while snow etched its patterns into the trees behind the family cottage. Naira giggling in the cold wind, Kaelan clutching her tiny hand and promising to protect her from fate's cruelty. In that memory, the strings of a silent piano resonated faintly with safety and nostalgia. They set off together through a narrow passage between rusted huts where shadows of broken water taps danced. Lana's breath quickened as they reached the valley's edge. Her hair swayed gently before she pulled from her pocket a small black cloth, part of the Shadow class uniform. Kaelan took it quietly, recalling his last encounter with Felix, who had joked, Don't tell Lana I found this pendant in your stash, or she'll make me parade through the market getting roasted. Kaelan had laughed then, warmth flickering in his chest. Now they stood in a neglected field, with closed doors of unknown fate between them and the truth. She felt his hand gently clasp her arm, an unspoken tenderness stronger than words. Kaelan met her gaze. Are you really all right? She nodded slowly, eyes reflecting a war of strength and vulnerability. My heart tells me this path won't be easy, but our trust and ability to speak openly are what keep the light alive in me. As they slipped through the path leading to the valley's heart, the atmosphere shifted. Bird calls and distant grinding wheels gave way to the hush of whispering currents between rocky slopes. The scent of damp soil and decayed water lingered. A cool mist brushed Kaelan's brow. Deep within the valley, among broken tree trunks, a faint light glowed near a sandy river. The guardian stood at the entrance of a small pit, a tall man clad in lord-class attire, black robes laced with silver threads, and a golden mask, leaving only the eyes exposed. The mask shimmered as sunlight touched the metal engravings. He held a curved bow, his eyes alert to every shift in the valley. Kaelan and Lana exchanged a glance, one of tension and resolve. They moved forward cautiously, whispering a silent chant of preparation. "If he notices both of us, we'll be in real trouble," Kaelan murmured as Lana searched her pocket for a small, cold-bladed knife. The guardian slowly advanced. Kaelan raised a hand to signal a halt. Lana edged closer, hidden partially by the slanting trees. She whispered with pressing urgency, "There's a small door behind him, leading to a dark cave. I think it's our only way to reach Felix unnoticed." Kaelan gave a sharp smile, whispering, "If I can deal with Lord-class magic again, it won't be too hard." Lana returned a tired but firm smile. "Maybe, but time's against us." As they crept behind the guardian, Lana's hand gently tightened around Kaelan's arm, a reassurance of presence. In his eyes, she saw a flicker of a heart torn between duty and affection. Silence fell inside him, words of love resting in her throat, waiting. But the sound of a loose stone breaking underfoot betrayed their presence. Kaelan gently pushed Lana behind a dark lower trunk, turning toward the sound. The golden mask of the guardian gleamed as he turned, eyes suspicious. Lana's heartbeat surged with a blend of excitement and fear. Kaelan drew his knife slowly, passing a cloth over its blade to dull the shine. He whispered, "Steady your breath. I'll distract him. You slip past." Lana raised her brows in surprise, but his firm tone propelled her into motion. As Kaelan stepped behind the guardian and laid a hand on his shoulder, a shudder ran through the man, devoid of magic. His robe's silver threads quivered, his mask pulsed faintly. The guardian gasped, his scream like a soul escaping. Kaelan's blade nicked his arm, pain stalled him. The guardian staggered, breath slowing. Meanwhile, Lana melted into the shadows behind him, slipping through the small door into the cave. She lit an old lantern of faint blue glow. Dust particles floated in the beam, revealing a descending path through rock. Her eyes searched. There lay Felix, limp on damp clay, bound by metal cables, head bowed in exhausted surrender. Heart torn between pity and determination. Behind her, a shadow, Kaelan. He stepped beside her as she reached to wipe dried blood from Felix's face. Love echoed in Kaelan's whisper. "He looks weaker than I imagined." Lana turned to him, her gaze a blend of grief and strength. "He's cursed. He tried to resist the magic, but the forced bindings drained his spirit, slowly." Kaelan couldn't hide his ache. He reached to brush Felix's soiled hair, whispering, "We have to break these chains." He stood, trembling hands reaching for his weapon. In silence, both resolve and fear gripped them. Kaelan carefully picked the lock, dismantling the magical chains. As the final lock fell, Felix's face shimmered with life. His eyes fluttered open. Kaelan rushed to him, cupping his face with trembling joy and guilt. "Felix, we thought you were gone. I'm sorry it took so long." Felix raised a weak hand, brushing Kaelan's cheek. "I never left. I didn't want you two to go through what I did. All I ever wanted was your protection, but they gave me this deadly power, and they can control anyone with a single command." Lana watched, deeply moved. Kaelan stepped forward, placing his chest plate by Felix's side. "I won't let you face this alone. Like I told you once in the fabric market, nothing matters more than friends." Lana gave Kaelan a tender look, their hesitation and longing interwoven. In that moment, they knew their feelings were a tide stronger than the chaos around them. Felix sat against a stone ledge, staring through a crack in the cave's ceiling. His voice was low. "You must go to the Lord's main magic bastion, the Bell Hall. We must find the thread that leads to the one behind the Night of Light." Fear murmured in their hearts, but so did determination. Kaelan wondered, if they defeat this guardian and break his magic, is it over? Or are they entangled in a conspiracy far greater than they can grasp? As the trio stepped toward the faint light outside the cave, they realized their enemies had left a mark. On a nearby stone slab, a bloody inscription read, "O betrayers of the second bride, O crafters of chains, freedom's son will not escape our wings." And in the echo of their homeland, a voice whispered, "It's time to learn a new lesson." Tension resounded in their hearts as the chapter closed. Will Kaelan, Lana, and Felix decode the Night of Light before Lord Magic devours them? Or will this final message test them with another loss or a fall from grace that cannot be undone? Chapter 4. The Stillness of Torn Hearts. Deep within the inner spiral of an abandoned palace, silence hung heavier than a pile of stones. These hours did not begin with the chill of morning light. They groaned under the weight of shadows stretching across long corridors, cloaking crumbling stones in a dark, delicate shroud. Kaelan Arkwright stood at a defiant threshold, where the palace doors spoke a language of oppressed silence, as if daring him to break their ancient quiet. A moment of tension passed over the trio. Felix Vanis's legs trembled, as though he were searching for something hidden in the dust-covered walls. Lana Rosevale wavered between pain and resolve, her eyes capturing the tiniest of details, a silence so fragile that the slightest sound might shatter the entire palace. "I don't think we'll find what we seek so easily. Nithor Sungwara never leaves a trace unguarded. Once, his letters warned me that if I ever tried to break free, I'd be writing my own eulogy." The light of a small lamp in Kaelan's hand dimmed, its remaining yellow flame crumbling against the cracked walls. Dust scattered with every movement, as if their footsteps were narrating the tale of past failures. Lana approached an engraved inscription on a rusted iron door in the main hall and read the words aloud slowly. "Here, night swallows the dreams of the hopeful." They were stunned to realize this place wasn't just a gate. It was a facade of something deeply embedded within their being. Regret searing the chest like a flame licking at the soul. Lana's voice faltered before she continued. This is a hint of something like a spiritual well that drains hope from within." They exchanged glances, steeped in worry and confusion. Kaelan felt as though the ropes binding his heart were tightening around his ribs. They could no longer ignore the danger pulsing through this cryptic entrance. Felix stepped back, his face twitching as if something deep within his bones had just snapped. Lana rushed to him, seeing a tear trembling in his confused eyes, and asked in concern, "What's wrong?" He replied with a broken voice, "I've tried to rest, but my mother's voice keeps haunting me in my dreams. She says she's still trapped in the dark dungeons beneath the palace." Despair gripped Kaelan's heart with brutal force. This was the moment when frustration bloomed like a wilted tree on a path starved of water. He backed against the brittle wall, pressing his palms to the cold stone, as though searching for even a sliver of warmth in a place dead to the sun. Lana whispered bitterly, "I know how you feel. In my heart lives a shame for leading you both here with no clear purpose, as if betrayal resides in the smallest parts of me, and you are the ones paying for it." Kaelan threw her a sharp look, a mirror reflecting his own terror, as he said, "Don't wound yourself like this. Pain is part of the road. But if pain spills until it engulfs us, how will we ever see a glimmer of hope?" Lana's lips quivered. She replied with a choked voice, "Maybe we've yet to admit the truth. We don't know how to defeat this magic. We have no map, no clue where to press to tear this purse apart." In that moment, a thick silence took hold. Then a faint crack was heard behind them, like stone breaking in the dark. They turned to find a portion of the wall had fractured, revealing a narrow gap leading to the next corridor. It looked like an invitation, beckoning them deeper into the palace. Felix's despair rose into a choking gurgle as they slipped through the gap. I can't. I promised my mother I'd return before sunset, but with every step, my heart groans. I don't think I'll make it to the end." A tear streamed down his cheek as he added, "My dream of saving her has turned into a nightmare, eating away at my heart. I don't see the light anymore." Felix collapsed to his knees, burying his head in his hands. He had no more words to offer, his legs shaking under the crushing weight of shame and defeat. Kaelan and Lana stepped back, saying nothing. The silence was now theirs, a collective disappointment pressing hollow chords into the walls of their chests. Kaelan looked at Lana. She was catching her breath in shallow sips before whispering sharply, "We're not leaving him here like this." Her eyes locked onto theirs, burning with both worry and will. Either we move forward together, or we lose each other entirely. They exchanged glances that hid within them a painful resolve. There could be no more hesitation. The way back to their hearts was now paved with thorns. Kaelan raised his hand to untie a soft knot wrapped around his wrist, his fingers brushing a scrap of fabric hanging from Felix's pocket, engraved with a faded inscription. "In the burrows of darkness, a faint hope is born." A hush of awe fell among them as they realized the phrase was more than words. It was an arrow they could fire toward the heart of the unknown. Kaelan thought of Nira, who knew nothing of her brother's fate. He thought of Felix, on the brink of surrender. And in that instant, one terrifying truth unfolded. The conspiracy had deepened their wounds, and the sea now separated them from salvation by a measure no eye could see. Kaelan reached out to Felix, and Lana followed. Their trembling fingers joined into a single bond, and Lana lifted her gaze to the gray sky and said, "We won't surrender to despair. We'll prove that the light in our hearts, even if dimmed, is greater than their magic." At that very moment, a cracked bell rang from the next hall, not a real sound, but a whisper slipping through the walls of ancient silence. He who chases ghosts he cannot name may become a ghost himself. And beneath that haunting whisper, hope dimmed, partially veiled by a new wall of questions, leaving their hearts to groan under the weight of a path now darker than night itself. Will any of them find the courage to take hold of the journey, even if the weakest among them is on the edge? Or will the shadows consume them before they reach the heart of the Night of Light? Chapter 5. Confronting the Night of Light. In the somber bustle of the abandoned palace hall, the dim blue light of the lamps seemed like a nail piercing the darkness. Stones crowded around them as if holding their breath, while the three stood before a massive iron gate, its echoes playing a shell game, repeating the sound at last. Knock, knock, Knock. Felix's veins trembled as his chest fluttered with a faint regret. His eyes lingered on Kaelan Arkwright and Lana Roseville with a final yearning, as if silently asking, "Are we truly ready?" At that moment, time felt as if it were reversing. Felix turned his gaze toward the exposed ceiling, where storm clouds gathered and glimmered faintly in the distance. He closed his eyes for a moment, and the words fear and helplessness disappeared from his inner lexicon, replaced by the memory of a promise he made to his mother. "I swore I would return, and even if I must walk the path of death, I won't come back empty-handed." Lana found Kaelan's hand and held it gently, taking from its warmth a silent syllable of will. Her gaze turned to him, shining with question and resolve. "We cannot miss this chance. Destiny does not wait." Kaelan reached for the gate's lock, his lips trembling slightly. He took one last breath, then broke the silence with the pressure of a determined hand against the mute door. "Let's open the gates and face the truth." As the gate groaned open with a shriek of torn metal, the trio entered the Hall of Bells, which stretched behind them like a memory. Above the hall was a narrow bridge, beneath which a deep chasm exhaled a faint throb, as if the sound echoed with the rhythm of their hearts. The way forward tightened around Felix's veins as he realized the path they had chosen echoed the growl of a beast poised to devour the last twigs of their hope. They saw before them a winding stone staircase leading to a vast chamber where no voice could rise beyond whispers of fear. Kaelan took the lead, climbing with steps like falling drops of blood between the stones. His eyes hesitated at the final push, for atop the edge lay a crumbling iron structure threatening collapse at the slightest misstep. Lana, watching the burdened features on Kaelan's face, whispered, "If you falter now, everything collapses." Felix's voice returned to their souls like an unfinished vow, as he said with trembling resolve, "We are all vulnerable to falling, but the true fear is being trapped." At last, they reached the hall. Moonlight streamed through a high window like molten blue light dancing on the cracked floor. At the center, beneath an arch of ancient stone, sat Lord Nether Sangwara on a throne adorned with carved faces, half charred, half fluttering with whispers of forgotten creatures. He opened his eyes slowly and gazed at them with a stern look devoid of mercy. "You've finally arrived." A surge of tension rushed through their veins like a raging river. Kaelan raised his small sword to chest level, his hand trembling between dread and defiance. Nether responded with a bitter smile. "Did you think you could sneak in without being noticed? You've already danced the final steps of a pre-written waltz." The moonlight cast their shadows like ghosts on the hall's walls. Lana stood gripping her dagger, her eyes lowered as they met Felix's gaze, each seeing the tragedy mirrored in the other's eyes. Now the moral paradox began to ferment. Before Nether stood staircases of choices devoid of mercy. His footsteps echoed toward them, his hand trailing regulated magical particles, green misty threads, as if light itself was collapsing inside him. Lana whispered as if bidding farewell to eternity. "All we wanted was to save the ones we loved. How did it come to this?" Nether turned to her with a toothy smile. "Because love, my dears, is your weakest link. And I've used my magic to peer into the secrets you hold." He drew a magical rifle from his side, emitting a violet spark that swirled through the chamber and formed a wall of light encircling Felix's veins, whose face was frozen in an upward pull. The trio realized he had become the game's fuel, his fate suspended on threads of cruel options. Which of them do you want to save? Those words fell like a knife, flaying their innermost membranes. Felix leaned back slightly, preparing for death, his final desire for life slipping across his features. His eyes filled with panic as he said, voice woven with sorrow, "I came here willingly. Take my freedom, but let Kaelan's sister live." Kaelan's expression changed suddenly. The colors drained from his face as the full weight of the moral dilemma struck him. Should he save his sister Nara, lost in some unknown place, or his friend, whose body and soul were being stolen before his eyes? A memory of Nara's voice flickered in his mind like a weak paper burning in an ancient fire. He didn't even know if she was still alive beneath the ruins. Kaelan finally spoke, voice strained with tension and grief. "If I weigh your life against my sister's, it might bring a greater disaster. Please, let your heart tremble with us." A tear escaped Felix's eye as he looked into his friend's eyes. "I'm ready, but what you're crafting here, it's more than this bound body can bear." Nathor Sengwara gave them a cunning smile and said slowly, "Very well. I'll give you two choices. Break the magical balance between life and death, and your name will be erased from noble records, while your sister is thrown into the dark dungeons. Choose her life, and Felix will have mere minutes before he loses his sanity." The moon retreated. The light faded in the depths of the chamber. It felt like a grave cradled their hearts in deadly stillness. Kaelan's eyes widened with a great delusion. Should he pursue a sister whose heartbeat he couldn't even confirm, or reach to save Felix, the last pillar beneath his feet? Waves of shock and inner screams crashed inside him, and the ground itself seemed to collapse, until he recalled their first confrontation with the valley's guardian, that moment when he cast aside his fear for his friend. He saw again the faces of the graveyard district's children, and in his chest ignited the flames of responsibility. Lana's face contorted, and Kaelan heard her ragged breathing. He too now grasped the tragedy crafted by a merciless fate. At last she said, voice broken, "We must be honest with ourselves. If we don't take this step, we'll swallow both bullets and magic." Kaelan stepped slowly toward Felix, placed his hand on his friend's tense shoulder, and whispered with resilience and defiance, "I've failed too long, but now it's time for redemption. I choose you, Felix. I'll bear the curse of the nobles and block the path of your magic." Felix lit up with a faint glow. He no longer felt the sorrow that had seeped into his years. His face bore one final expression of gratitude before releasing a trembling sound like a breath severed midway. Kaelan raised his sword toward Nathor Sengwara, his chest bent with regret and resolve alike. His heart pounded furiously, the veins in his neck pulsing stronger than before. "You may consume this body, but you'll never consume our spirit." Nathor didn't comprehend the words at first, but his regulated magic shook the hall as he surged forward, eyes flickering with a greedy hunger for power. His gaze met Kaelan's sword, weaving a dance of defiance, darkness, and light. Suddenly, movement, a swift strike from Kaelan toward Nathor's chest. The regulated magic blocked it with a blade of blue light carrying the glow of a dark past. Kaelan's sword vibrated madly in his hands, and a croak of pain emerged from his heart. He knew then he couldn't merge the nobles and the forgotten. If he kept fighting like this, it could lead to total annihilation across the kingdom. If he retreated, he'd let Felix die slowly, robbed of hope. His heart stopped suddenly. His sword slipped. Nathor caught him with one arm, smiling venomously. "You broke before even knowing why you fight." Lana stumbled in terror, and Felix's face showed resignation. But in a flash, Kaelan dropped to his knees and raised his hands to the sky, crying, "You hold a reservoir of terrified souls, but our blood cannot be erased. I chose you, Felix, because you're my friend, even if my sister remains in shadow forever." His words poured like tears into the walls of the palace. Nethor seemed affected. The atmosphere around him shifted. A small wall behind him shattered, revealing a narrow corridor, the hidden prison chamber where Nera had been held. Kaelan's face twisted in disbelief, joy, and sorrow. His silent prophecy had come true. Saving his friend saved him from internal ruin and proved his sister still lived. Lana looked up, despair fading from her eyes, replaced by a final explosion of hope. But the joy shattered in a mad instant when Nethor screamed, the magic itself breaking his voice. "I've captured your true soul and stripped you of choice." They now saw the terrible truth. His other hand held a dagger coated in dry blood, an instrument to deform souls. Before them, Kaelan's noble shield now reflected two scenes: a dagger poised to tear apart the worlds they had built, and a rope of light tightening on their hearts, dragging them toward the meanings of sacrifice and loyalty. The moral paradox had reached its peak. Kaelan's desire to remain loyal to his friend nearly cost him his sister. His yearning to save his sister nearly cost him his friend. Here, the ringing of bells in the palace ceased. A long silence echoed like the wail of a buried soul. The trio needed only one moment to decide. Will they remain silent forever under this tyranny, or rise against such cruel fate? Felix Ivanez shook his head violently. His face, in an instant, shifted from defeated to metallic resolve. His words exploded with ferocity and conviction. "You've won, for now, Sanguara, but you haven't stolen the one thing we still have, our spirit, which won't stop foreseeing or fighting for freedom." Nethor smiled coldly, raised his weapon toward his chest, when suddenly, behind him, a brilliant bloom light burst forth, a calling of fate. There stood Niravanes, freed from her rusted cell. Her light shimmered across her falling braids, and she stepped uncertainly into the hall. As her feet touched the ground, Nethor's magic trembled. His body began to show decay. Yes, Nera was the unforeseen key between the oppressed and the forsaken. Kaelan's eyes locked with hers, and when he saw her standing at the threshold, reaching for him, he made his final vow. "This darkness shall not last forever." Kaelan surged toward Nethor, rage and determination pulsing through his muscles. Lana followed without hesitation. Felix joined 2 steps behind, his eyes reignited with the glow of the dream. Chapter 6: The Dawn of Hope. After a long moment of silence in the palace hall, where even the echo of the distant sea had faded, Kaelan Arkwright felt a delicate twinge, scented with the fragrance of rain-soaked earth. The first rays of sunlight seeped through the gaps in the high window, gently embracing the ancient stones, as if restoring warmth to them after a long, dark night. The trio, Kaelan, Lana, and Felix, stood amidst the partially ruined remains of the palace. Lana sipped hurriedly from a small teapot they had carried with them from their cabin in the graveyard district. The scent of thyme mixed with mint drifted through the tender morning breeze, allowing Hope a brief breath. She took a small dose of rest after a long journey of exhaustion. Felix looked down at his slightly trembling hands, then took a deep breath, as if contemplating the healing of a long-ignored internal wound. In a voice dripping with gratitude, he said, "My body no longer revolts against me. Pain is no longer my master." Kaelan caught the faint spark in his friend's eyes and gently took his hand, whispering, You've returned to us from the darkest folds. We won't lose you again." A tender look passed between Kaelan and Lana, as though their silence condensed years of fear and hope, their hearts now united in one desire: to build a future where the dark elite's magic could never cast its shadow again. Lana, drawing hazy lines with her fingertips on a cracked wall, said, "Even these wounded walls hold something worth preserving. We won't rebuild the palace as it was. We'll turn it into a sanctuary for survivors, a home for all, without chains of class or magic." The oak trees surrounding the palace swayed gently in a warm breeze, as if applauding the vision. Kaelan stepped forward, touching a scratch on the old bark, and said, while examining it, "This place has witnessed bitter tales, but tomorrow it might hear new songs. Let's preserve it, if we can." As the last remnants of darkness faded from the horizon, waves of people from all classes emerged from the corridors. The shadow folk, dragging remnants of the dark days behind them, offered trembling smiles to the trio. Workers and farmers, with fists shaped by struggle, carried sacks of tools, ready to build bridges, barriers, and wooden homes. Merchants and artisans laid out small carpets for mobile workshops that produced cloth, utensils, and simple tools. A few former feltmen ascended the hill to help lift heavy stones and continue roofing damaged shelters. In this gathering, there was only one will, emerging from thousands who were once divided by fear and hierarchy. Their eyes turned toward Kaelan, standing on a makeshift wooden platform, their faces lit with smiles woven tightly with hope. Kaelan spoke aloud, his voice strong yet gentle at its core. "Today marks the dawn of a new era. Never again will magic be used to shackle souls. Our magic will be for healing and learning, for all, not to stifle their dreams." Cries of fervor erupted in every direction. The open hall rang with voices of determination and smiles too genuine to be hidden by tears. After organizing the workers and assigning tasks, Felix asked Kaelan and Lana for a moment alone to resolve one final matter. He led them to a small wing in the palace's southern wing, once used to imprison members of the shadow folk. There they found Nira. Her face looked worn from sleepless nights, but her eyes still glimmered with a shy light. Within moments, she collapsed into Kaelan's arms. Her eyelids fluttered against his forehead in a silence that merged joy with terror, as if she couldn't believe her brother had truly come to rescue her. A soft slap to his cheek silenced his words, and as she spoke through urgent sobs, Kaelan embraced her tightly and pressed a longing kiss to her brow. "I wished you'd come to me sooner," Nira said, trembling. "I feared you had forgotten me." She looked up at him with tender eyes. He stroked her hair and replied in a low voice, stitching together a sliver of lost safety. "I never forgot you, not for a moment. I sang for you in my dreams, songs I wrote by candlelight, but the Lord sorcerers locked every gate of time, hoping I would." Tears of quiet gratitude welled up in her eyes. "I promise to be part of all that heals this land, but I fear I may burden you." He kissed her forehead again and said, "The weight of your love will never grow old. Go now, with hope in your heart. Our home is open to all." Felix, who had briefly stepped away, returned with a small bowl of bitter red tea. He handed it to Kaelan and whispered, "You must taste victory, and this is a special brew, leaves grown in the shadow groves to cool hearts still aflame." Kaelan smiled as he took it, then murmured, "Hope always comes at a cost, but it tastes sweeter when we pass through fire together." They all emerged into the courtyard, still covered in the ashes of last night's fire. A few light raindrops fell from the sky, extinguishing the final embers like a fleeting flash in everyone's eyes. All the people of every class approached the last standing palace. They walked toward a wild rose garden, its birds singing joyfully overhead. Some hung red cloths as symbols of the blood that nourished this land. Others placed pink stones around the broken ministers' halls, hoping they would birth natural herbs and plants. Kaelan stood on a wooden bridge connecting the old wing to the garden's courtyard. He held Niara's small hand as she gently gripped his. He looked at her radiant face, like a star newly born over the graveyard district, and promised to build her a school atop the hill, where the flame of knowledge would shine with every child who entered. Lana joined Kaelan and Felix, producing a luxurious strand of unburnt blue silk, saying with delicate pride, "This thread comes from the garments of the lords who once believed in their power. I'll repurpose it into a fabric of transparency, one that teaches every girl and boy the art of weaving and spinning, so they learn the strength of self-reliance." Kaelan and Felix exchanged a glance filled with admiration for the quiet resilience etched in their faces. Then Felix turned to the horizon and spoke, his voice tinged with sorrow for the past and hope for what lies ahead. "We'll continue to harvest the best from this world, whether it be a dream or an idea, until this land can carry all dreams within it." As his words settled, the sky smiled. A faint rainbow split the clouds, reflecting the same blue silk in Lana's hand. The horizon shimmered, an omen that the coming seasons would bloom in brighter colors. Breath returned to the freshly restored palace hall, as though life itself had come to dance along the new walls. Children from every district gathered to sing and perform on a small wooden stage in the garden's heart. Kaelan stepped onto the platform, standing beside the strands of silk adorned with roses and falling stars. He held Niara's little hand in his, placing his other hand over his heart as he raised his gaze to the crowd, saying tenderly, "This is the end of the old road and the beginning of a new chapter written by freeing our hearts. We will never again let the shadows of sorcery frighten us. I promise you, hope will keep beating in your chests just as it beats in mine now." Felix stepped beside him and whispered, reflecting both joy and awe, "The deepest magic in this land is simply learning to love it." Kaelan nodded, then looked at Lana with a mixture of courage and tenderness, saying in a voice echoing pride and warmth, "And I now know your light will never fade, no matter how heavy the clouds." Her smile refused to be forgotten. Then the bright sun illuminated the palace wing, and every face glowed brighter, as though they all bore witness to a spirit returning to stones long bereft of it. At that moment, while the sound of drums and tambourines marched into the horizon, the trio understood that their mission had not ended, but had only just begun. Kaelan would continue building schools and roads, ensuring that no magic would ever shackle anyone again. Lana would open a workshop for weaving and free education for girls, dedicating her silk to liberty and life. Felix would heal the scars of those who had been enslaved to labor, establishing a small clinic using herbs, not spells. The footsteps slowly faded into the final sunset, and all who had come knew this was not a farewell, but a renewed journey rising from the ruins of injustice. The end. We've broken the chains of magic and status, but we're still bound by time, and time will always be our next challenge as we chase the dreams that await us.